My name's Rob Hirschfeld. We have a lot of members of the Dell Crowbar team. Guys, when you talk, please make sure you introduce yourselves. This is a weekly design review meeting as part of our normal sprint process. We have 2 weekly meetings in this process. They're documented in the Crowbar 2 wiki page, which you can get to bit.ly.crowbar-2. Of those 2 meetings, there's a planning meeting on Thursdays at 8 a.m. Central when we discuss things that we've done and are planning to do. And this meeting is a prep for that, where we discuss design concerns leading into the next sprint plan. So the purpose of this meeting is to do that. It has a flexible agenda. It's meant to be community-driven based on design decisions that we need to make in the next sprint or 2. The sprints are weekly, and that's pretty much what the agenda is. We do track items from the last sprint when we close these calls, or as things are going, we will track items that we want to continue. So these are items that we'd identified for next week's discussion. And also, we had a discussion start on the list about bar clamp names. So the first topic that I would propose that we cover is alternate names for proposals. But before we dive into that, I wanted to get other topics out if we needed to. Let me bring up the list of things that we've covered, or things that we were talking about. Object models, I think, is an ongoing question and always a good backup. I just accepted a push from Greg with a lot of changes where he moved around some important code, so we could probably talk about that. UEFI we talked about last sprint. Networking I think is important but pending. This topic should come. I think that's an ongoing one. So, hey, it's excellent. Good. And I'm also going to, there's a new model. It's a service object service object changes in approach for 2.0. Okay. And is that Adam typing? Okay, good. So, and Adam, I appreciate you taking leadership on the mailing list and bringing up these ideas there. That's really great to get the conversation started. So, actually, Adam, if you want to speak to the proposals thing, just spend a minute introducing topic, and then we can go through the discussion on it. I'm going to ask though that we keep it to 10 minutes or less for the total discussion.
Did you like any of the ones that on extra bits onto it. So, the fixture sort of matches that idea of bolting extra things on. It also has the implication of something that stays the same once it's applied. So, if you have a chef recipe that configures a file in a particular way, and then somebody goes and edits it manually, then the next chef client run, it will change it back. So it's kind of got that notion of the configuration being fixed. And also in the way that, the chef recipes are idempotent. No matter how many times the proposal is applied, it's still kind of a fixed result. So, and then there's, fixture, the sort of carries on the metaphor of, furniture in a house or that kind of thing as well, which sort of seems to tie in with the whole building DIY kind of metaphor. So I guess that was my favourite. And, so in that case, I guess the two terms would be like proposed fixture or fixture proposal and applied fixture, something like that. But I'm not religious about it.
It's what I want to inject in this is that there's some changes in the way proposals operate that are important in how the model's changing. So one of the things that was very limiting in the past is that we dealt with Chef, and Chef was basically on or off. So we could have multiple proposals, but there really was only one active and applied thing. Actually, they were originally called active roles because it was a summation of the roles that had been implemented in the system. So the states that a proposal, or whatever we call it or don't change, goes through these stages, right? It starts with a template, which is effectively a reference point. It goes into a pending state where there's some type of editing being done. It can be applied. Once it's applied, it's active, and probably active, maybe a better word for it. So review and pending, active and applied, failed. So a proposal could be in a failed state, and then there's a passed state. So one of the things that it's important to think of in this is that we're moving to a data model that's closer to a timeline, and you would roll forward or roll backwards proposals in a more transactional model is the plan, rather than a very it's a proposal and then it's applied. We had a very two-state model. So I don't know if that helps clarify things. It's an important thing to note about how proposals are changing. And Greg, is Greg online?
Yeah.
Okay. I think if we're going to make a change to what this is called, if we wait any longer, it's going to become even more of a pain. But so this is sort of, I think, a make or break day for whether or not we want to change it before a lot of more code gets set down relying on the word proposal. So, Greg, you want to weigh in a little bit? Do other people want to make some statements before Greg? Okay, go ahead.
I've been trying, for me, I'd like to see kind of the active proposal terms pulled out, or deployed proposal. But the problem is I haven't come up with a better name that I'm willing to live with. Part of the problem. Creation seems generic, and fixtures is overloaded in the Rails app itself.
Yeah, contract I liked, but this seems too legal to me. The deployment is also too general. I think a life cycle has a different meaning. A plan. Actually, a plan in some ways going back to the building plans and blueprints, going back to the building scenarios, seem good. There were a couple more that I don't have the emails in front of me, so if people want to add them or suggest them. Plan is generic, but not overloaded in the development sense. Right.
Maybe we do by bulleting column configurations, right? I think the color of the bullet showing the green is anyway telling us that it's applied.
I didn't catch that.
Shows the color of the proposal, right? Yellow, green, red.
Correct.
Yeah, so seeing it as green just tells us that it's carried, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think we can be clear about what the state is. I guess people are confused from the perspective of when a proposal is active, it sounds confusing to people. Right, a proposal is really a state of a configuration, right, and the colors would support that declaration.
Mission or operation would be another alternative.
Those are really verby. I'd like us to limit to nouns. I mean, I know a mission is a noun. I'm not that poor, but it sounds very verby to me.
I'm just browsing CSRs.com just for ideas. There's quite a lot of words on there.
What was your other suggestion, Simon?
Operation or mission. The life cycle was my first one. That's actually my favorite out of the ones that I kind of dug around in my thing. But again, it's a really generic term. We're not okay with generic terms. But it does incorporate all kinds of things, and it's very enterprising in terms of software. Right? So you can life cycle active, life cycle proposed, life cycle blah blah blah. So it contains kind of all of the needed. And it's very operational in the sense that it fits well into that.
Yeah. I'm still. I think a configuration actually still makes the most sense. It's overloaded. I guess it would end up being the config object or yeah. So let me test out configuration as an option or config. So we would say there'd be a barclamp.config, and you'd have a barclamp active config and a barclamp proposed config. You'd have a barclamp. So when you went to the Crowbar, you'd say apply config. That actually makes sense to me over proposal. I mean, apply proposal makes sense, but more formal. Yeah. Right. Would it be clearer if it was called a configuration?
I think it's most widely used in people can think.
Yeah, I like schema too, but it was too databasey to me. So in the purposes of maximum clarity, I would think that the word configuration would do that. And then, Greg, what does that do with we already have a proposal config. That proposal config becomes the details, or the profile's not bad. So what I wanted to do is I didn't want this to keep going. I think I would throw it to Greg as the arbiter, and he can make a call. Do you want to do it?
Configuration's fine, and then we can deal with the subnaming as most of that will never be seen in the UI. So.
Correct.
Right, so proposals becomes configuration, and your actual proposal config would become configuration config.
It would be like details or items or data or facts, probably, or something like that.
Well, this comes to a thing where the UI doesn't show this concept now. They're the same thing. The configuration, as we're talking about it here, with regards to objects, is just a placeholder to say you have something named Fred. And then all the current, if you look at the current model, the proposal config model is really what Fred config at a certain point in time is.
Right.
And so you can then build a history of what Fred was over time, what it currently is set to, and what you want it to become, or what you're editing. Right? So, okay. So we can come up with names internally for those. Externally, it sounds like we prefer configuration over proposals, so that's fine. If nothing else, the UI will show things as configuration. If the covers will probably change at least the proposal objects to configuration, and then we can deal with the downstream effects of that.
Right. That'll have some.
Not later. Either a detail object or whatever.
Right. Okay. So let's close that and move on. What we'll do is we'll officially lock that decision on Thursday, unless you decide to just change it. But we can leave it fluid. Why don't we do that? Why don't we leave it fluid until Thursday, and we'll lock it officially at the Thursday meeting. That way, if people on the list, people can gestate on it and see if it makes if there's any allergic reactions, and you can publicize that on the list. Sound like a fair plan?
Yep.
Good. All right. Okay. So Adam has an item open in Crowbar. So I'm debating, should we skip over to that, or do we want to talk about the services object changes? I haven't opened that issue, so I can do that on the screen.
original one. I'm trying to remember why. Oh yeah, that's right, because it's part that I discovered with SSH authorized keys. Some weird behavior, which I won't discuss now, but basically, if the SSH authorized key on a node gets corrupted and doesn't have the admin node's public key in there, then the proposal can't be applied successfully. So in the interface, you'll get a thing saying, proposal was failed to apply, but it doesn't say why. Basically, I think the only way of debugging at that point is to figure out which nodes it failed for, and then go in and look at the chef file log on those nodes. At least that's the only way that I'm kind of aware of.
So here's Adam. I agree with you about wanting to expose that data. I think that looking at the code that we just pushed, I realize they pushed literally minutes before this meeting, but in the Rails 2 stuff is some of those things we can address there, which is where I'd expect to make those changes. So what I would suggest we do is we take that, because I think they're reasonable comments, but we weave them into the service and queue object changes, and have Greg spend a couple minutes talking about how that changed, and some of the considerations that are going on in that, because that I think is going to be significantly. I'll let Greg talk about it.
Okay, great. Yeah. So for the queuing and notification of why things are queued and delayed and pending, all that should be getting better. The queue read is now a separate kind of managed thing, so that it can give better return data and all that stuff. So that's, I think, addressed. The issue of upon failure, what failed and why did it fail, that still needs some work on how much and what do you expose. And so, where did that go and how that is we haven't resolved. So we know that needs to be addressed, and we need to do something with it. There's some of the issues, and some of this being worked now with regard to we're adding a CMDB abstraction layer, and part of that layer is going to record that information and let you look at it over time, so that you can see what's going wrong and where and why. It's just not in yet, and it isn't kind of available. So we have places where this is going to get better. It's not necessarily going to be in the one X tree. Particularly with things like the CMDB abstraction, we'll start recording and storing in the database. Those things actually can be easierly displayed through the UI or through the RESTful API calls. Yeah, I know that doesn't help. We have plans to make it better. I don't know if I can say we're going to address exactly the way you want.
But this is something where if you spend some time talking through the changes we're making, then Adam could be looking at the code that's coming and seeing if there's a place to inject that.
Well, I didn't really have any kind of concrete thoughts about to improve this yet. I just wanted to raise the fact that I felt it needed some work, but you guys are obviously already aware of that and already thinking about it, so that's great. There was one specific case that I wanted to raise, which I noticed earlier today, and I'm not sure whether I'm understanding this correctly, but it seemed to me that if you apply a proposal and it fails to apply straight away for whatever reason, and then if something changes and a subsequent automatic shift client run that happens 15 minutes later or half an hour later or whenever, if that shift client run happens to succeed and basically the things that the proposal is trying to change, then I wasn't sure if there's any mechanism for the Crowbar for picking up on that and realizing that, oh, actually, Chef has kind of sorted itself out somehow, and then the proposal is applied, so the state of the proposal should automatically change in Crowbar.
So you're saying if Chef converges to make it right, then would Crowbar be aware that Chef had fixed it?
Exactly. Earlier today it looked like it wasn't spotting when that happened.
No. Sometimes we'll do a failed proposal does not show as applied. It shows as failed. But if you reapply, a lot of times the timing issues that cause the proposal to fail will often be resolved. And so reapplying a proposal does often fix the problem, which sort of is exactly what Adam, you're saying is, hey, if fixing a proposal fixes the problem, can't you just have a retry interval and then see if it worked? Which is reasonable. But so we're actually moving away from that. Greg, do you want to explain the lack of convergence or the alternate pattern?
So right now the real reason we use the 900-second interval is to update the little admin, the node status in the UI. That seems like an inappropriate use of that. We actually don't really like the convergence aspect of Chef used with Crowbar, mostly because of these reasons. We don't know when things have changed out from under Crowbar with regard to convergence. The other thing is, since Crowbar is trying to do orchestration, the whole convergence model is kind of different anyway. That Crowbar is trying to kind of orchestrate that through calls to Chef client. So we're contemplating turning off the intermittent Chef client runs on all the compute nodes and have them driven by Crowbar itself, so that it can then do a better job of keeping track of those status light situations. For this very purpose, so that it can get a better feed and view into the data what's actually going on. Now, for Chef specifically, there's been some thought that associated to their notification completion handlers, that we can catch responses and stuff, and results from Chef client runs, and then correlate those back into states. But right now, that's a fairly low priority item, since we're already doing a lot of direct control of Chef client runs. Somewhat makes more sense for us to turn that feature off for now and drive directly from Crowbar managing Chef client runs.
So
one more question.
go ahead.
I tried applying one proposal and it kind of failed in the middle. I go back to edit the proposal once again and change the proposal a little bit. It's not like the previous proposal. And I try to reapply. So does it really clean up the previous half-applied proposal, or it just overwrites everything?
It overwrites.
It overwrites.
Yeah, there's not really a cleanup. It's a try this again and reapply. But in general, the proposals into the cookbooks underneath tend to do full setups of things, so they tend not to necessarily rely on the previous state for most of the recipes, not all of them. So when you reapply, it's kind of like revalidating and re-putting down the whole thing again. So it's not as bad as making it sound. But,
It's sort of the Chef model. destroy in cloud. You would destroy the VM and rebuild and create and just get a fresh one because it's a more reliable state. And so we have the tooling to do the same thing on physical and just rebuild the whole machine if there's a problem.
And for the trade proposals, does it clear the country or it just tries to like because I might be applying a keystone proposal on one node and it kind of failed and it might change the proposal and put the keystone on a different machine. What about the previous failed machine where what happens there?
Yeah, it's left in a partial state. This again is a way that somewhat of a chefism in the sense that most chef recipes are written with cleanup actions, so it assumes that you're going to actually destroy the things that were inappropriately applied. I'm not happy with this, but it's a reality of the situation we're at right now. Crowbar itself could understand delete operations, we just haven't written them.
Yeah, it's a cost benefit curve on that. So, Greg, can you take a minute and explain the object, how the service model has changed in the code that's starting to surface right now? With the new operator class, and how the service model is being, I don't know if its role's changing, but we're moving a little bit.
Well, so in the latest 2.3, there's a bar clamp object, and instead of doing your evals to find the service object that you want to run against, you now look up the bar clamp object, and then it has a helper function that gets you to the actual operation that the bar clamp provides. So it just hides a lot of the eval stuff so that the service objects that we had before were a combination of data and operations, and the goal is to move the data into actual configuration objects, was currently proposal objects, but configuration objects that you can load and pull in. And then the operations are just class operations or class-like operations that know how to operate and do the actions by pulling from that data. Because in the past we had merged the two kind of together and pulled them directly from chef objects and stuff like that. Now we actually store them in the database, Crowbar's database, so that they're more readily available and treated as a unit. In some regards, if you're interested in that, you should go look at the code, because it's not necessarily most people won't need to know that level of stuff.
Right.
From a bar clamp construction perspective, you still build your service object, you still put your operation here. Some slight changes occur around how you initialize your data you want to store and stuff. For the most part, if it's simple or simplified data, kind of like what in most of our bar clamps today, there's some helper routines and stuff that can be used to store and put data onto these proposed or configuration objects. Hopefully here soon we'll have an example of a complex configuration object where the data is actually stored and kept in its own database, and then that writes it into the proposal objects. That's part of the network bar clamp rewrite that we're kind of going through.
So this is, I know Greg's looking at the code, and a lot of the code is just shifting from one class to another. The thing I saw about this that I liked was it was closer to an object separation, so that we actually have a concept of a data model for a configuration, and that config, and there's what I am thinking of as a factory that produces the operational object that you would then act on. So if you go to a bar clamp, you're going to request the operator. You can feed the operator a configuration, and then it's going to work against that model. So it struck me as a good change. I agree, Greg. A lot of people aren't going to see it at that level. It really ends up being if you're constructing a bar clamp, that it matters. My hope is that people who are attending these calls care about how we construct bar clamps and can give us feedback about making it easier. So looking at that pattern is useful for people to understand. Okay. And is there a specific code page I can bring up a? And we probably need to have a session, and maybe this is for next week when we've gotten the CMDB pieces a little bit further. That because I saw some of them come in, that we should talk about how we interface to the CMDB information and how because all this hash nomenclature is new, and so we're going to need to explain that a little bit so people can start seeing it. We're still moving around code a lot, so every bar clamp is changing as the semantics of the objects change. This is the model. This is the glance service object. So this is where you're going to create proposals. We're going to have a ton of naming changes with the configuration change. Yeah, that's going to be a pain. Okay. Wow.
I'm not sure we're ready to talk about this stuff yet.
I agree with you. Yeah, this is empty. So, I mean, part of these dialogues, I think, are ongoing multi-week things of the changes that occurred. There wasn't that much. So unless somebody has another topic, my suggestion is that we close the call for this week, and we consider talking about the CMDB pieces again. We talked about them, I think, 3 weeks ago, but I think we've gotten further along. We can talk about them next week, and we can surface. Why don't we surface topics for next time? I can figure out how to move this thing. I didn't stop sharing when I minimized that, did I? Yeah, okay. Next week's topics. I think we're past some of that. Object model changes. So what we're talking about for that one is we're talking about CMDB. Some of that data is starting to come in. Networking is we still need to talk about that. Style changes for bar clamp writing, we're sort of, that's still pending. Is there another topic? If you think of one, add it here. The Etherpads are open. I apologize for the brief interruption in service yesterday that probably nobody noticed, but I just told you about. And any closing comments before we wrap up the call? All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us in these calls. I hope they're helpful. If you have suggestions or improvements, I'm going to direct you to Simon, and he can start collecting feedback about how we can continue to improve our process. And of course, we talk about it for 10 minutes on Tuesdays. Thank you, everyone.